So our next student is Mr. Roy Samashwar, a PhD student fellow in robotics in Ben-Gurion University. Just a short introduction. Roy holds a master's degree both from German University in automation and control, and another master's from University in Spain, specializing in robotics. He has also worked in a Spanish robotics company and moved to Israel about 3 years ago to start his PhD. Please.
Thank you for the kind introduction. So, hi everyone. So as she mentioned, I'm Roy, working as a Marie Curie Fellow in robotics at Ben-Gurion University. And well, since last 3 years, I'm here in Israel. And looking back at this last 3 years, I would say it has been a wonderful experience. So in the next few minutes, I'll give my presentation in 2 parts. The first part, I'll talk about my experience here. And in the next part, I'll talk a little bit about my 2 cents about how you can recruit more Indian students, and most importantly about the trend of excelling Indian students, which is very important for you to know that how and where they move and what is their thought process. So let's start the journey. I think this is the button, right? No? Shahar, can you do some magic?
Maybe we can use the and just use the
Perfect.
Wait.
But no problem. Sure. So let's move. So before coming to Israel, as she mentioned, I received the Erasmus Mundus Fellowship 6 years back, and with which I moved to Europe to do my first master's from Germany, and then I moved to Spain to do my second master's. Then I was working in a Spanish robotics company called TreeLogic, and life was good and all settled. It was then that 3 years back that I received the Marie Curie Fellowship from European Commission to come to Ben-Gurion University for a joint PhD between Ben-Gurion and Umeå University. This decision, this bold decision, I would say, had several reactions. So this was the reaction of my parents, who thought I have gone really nuts that I left a good job in Europe and moved otherwise. This was the reaction of my Muslim friends from Europe and from India, who thought like, this guy has really lost all senses. And the most funny was my friends from all around the world. This was their reaction when they heard that I'm moving to Israel. Very truthful. These pictures really describe the true emotions of each of these 3 communities with which I am surrounded with, my social community. But let's look at the other part, why this reaction comes up in their minds. So these are the biggest misconceptions that people have. First is that, as my Chinese friend already told very nicely, that they believe that Israel is at war 24/7. So there's war at streets, there can be, Iran can drop nuclear bomb at any time, there is no law over here. So that's the perception they have. Coming to the other part is that they think that it's Middle East. So there exists all the Saudi Arabian barbaric laws existing over here. So they can't have an Israeli girlfriend maybe. And if they happen to have, then this is going to be their reaction by the government. And this is the landscape they expect that I am living here. I mean, they can't, they're really interested to know how Nobel laureates comes up from this kind of barren lands, and where is exactly my university situated in such a barren land. So that's the perception, or you can say the biggest misconceptions that my social community has, when they hear that this is Israel. This is the first pictures that it comes to their mind. I won't go into much detail because my Chinese friend has really explained very nicely about all these perceptions. So now talking about my experience. Well, initially it was of course a bold decision that I took, leaving behind all the stereotypes that my social community kept on imposing on my mind. And precisely I would say in one word that it was an unforgettable lifetime experience. So, and talking about the key things that I found here, because as I said that I already had a global experience before coming here. So I would really like to stress why I'm so impressed. Is because first of all, when we go to Europe, people look at us in a way that these guys are going to steal our jobs. These guys are here to take our rights, to take our basic right of job or something like that. But here, the common people, they treat us with a lot of respect. I felt a lot of love, warmth, and respect from the Israelis. They treat us as equal partners, equal peers. In fact, I still remember my first week here in Israel, and I went for shopping, for buying my blankets, pillows, and actually I was spending about 15 to 20 minutes at each shop, because whenever they are looking at me, from my face they could quickly recognize that this is an Indian guy, and they would start sharing their story. Hey, I was in India, I was in Varanasi, it was cool. And so I would spend about 20 minutes at each of the shops. This is a very special experience, you know, for a foreigner coming, leaving behind their motherland, coming to another place for studies. They have no social community here. When they get this warmth, it's very special. And this is something very special about Israel, where they really treat Indians with a lot of respect and warmth. Then coming to another very important point. In the field of research, the relationship between a supervisor and a researcher plays a very, very important role. Mostly you will hear PhD students quitting their research field. Sometimes they quit academia just because they end up finding a very bad supervisor. Because being a supervisor is very difficult, because they also have a very busy life. And this relationship dynamics is also very difficult. And this is something which I found very special among Israeli supervisors, be it my very own supervisor or be it my colleagues. And these are the 4 prime points that I found in them very special. They know how to mentor a research student. They know how to supervise, how well to supervise. They kept motivating us. Also, research is a field where there are ups and downs. You get demotivated. You might have done a very good research and your paper might get rejected from a journal. So that's why it's very important to get motivated. And this is where the Israeli professors really motivate you. And actually, this reminds me of a famous saying from one of the Israeli founder of AOL, Yossi Vardi. He said that the secret sauce of Israeli startups is the Israeli moms. So I happen to have an Israeli lady supervisor. So maybe that's why I had such a wonderful experience. And also another thing is about giving them new opportunities. Like as now I'm about to finish my PhD, my supervisor is constantly helping me finding new postdoc opportunities elsewhere. So it's like giving you a full all the aspects that you would expect from a supervisor. So that is I really cherish. Then of course the after-work social life which I have here. Beersheba is a student city, so you have already 20,000 students studying there. So the post-work life is also very nice. And yes, as I said that I have been living here for the last 3 years, so quite obviously I lived live the Operation Pillar of Defense. And as you know, Beersheba is just 42 kilometers from Gaza. So I had experienced all the sirens and everything. And I must say, again, at this point also, my supervisor played a very crucial role to help me not get afraid of this rocket attacks, to also call up my parents and telling them that there is no, you don't worry. Even my supervisor invited me to stay at her place if I'm feeling afraid. So I would say that I lived this time which was very critical at that time, and I actually enjoyed. I took one YouTube video and I posted it for my Indian friends to enjoy. So precisely, I had a good life. So that was to sum up my Israeli experience of 3 years. Now coming to another part of my presentation, which is, I would call, the trends of excelling Indian students.
What is your field?
Robotics, where Technion is equally a competing partner of Ben Gurion. Yes, so so here I would like to give some key inputs to you, which I feel is important for you to know. And I made this slides for the next, is keeping in mind the PVC fellowship that you have right now. Because without fellowship, no Indian will come at least. And so if you really want to attract PVC fellows, excelling Indians for this PVC fellows, then keeping that in mind, I prepared the next slides. So before I talk about the thing, what is important for you to know is about PhD in India. Because for PVC fellowship is a postdoctoral fellowship, so you should know about the PhD in India. Now, I'm not going into the other side of the education system, which our counselor has already told you about the education system and anything. I'll talk about the student perspective, the other side. So PhD fellowship in India is 1,000 shekels a month. Duration, at least 5 years, minimum. Many people end up doing PhD for 6-7 years. Hardly you get international travel grants. Maybe in 7 years you go once for any conference, if you are a super duper intelligent guy. You mostly live in campus. So our campuses are very much like Technion. You have students, professors living in the same campus. So mostly you have 24/7 work culture. You mostly spend your time at labs. As a result, you mostly live a student life. You don't get married in this PhD life because you get only 1,000 shekels. So you can't expect to have. So now why these 5 points I'm telling you? So normally engineering students who graduate from India and who are, let's say, excelling students, they never go for this path. What they do is they follow this path. They do a bachelor's in India, they go for a MS or a PhD in US or Europe, then if they are interested in academia, then they do a postdoc, let's say, in another country. So if they had their PhD in US, they might move to Europe for postdoc. If they are doing their PhD in Europe, they might move to US for their postdoc. Then, if they are still interested in academia, provided their supervisor was good enough to keep them motivated, they go back to India and join academia, or they settle back in US or Europe, or and they go back to India and start their company after 5 years, let's say, when they have enough capital, which my Chinese friend also told you. Now why I'm talking about this global Indian flowchart and why I'm talking about the existing PhD's life in India is because currently the PVC fellowship that you offer is gives a 20% bar on Indians and Chinese with foreign PhDs. As a result, you recruit generally those 80% Indians and Chinese who are doing their PhDs in India. That's why if you read the call of the PVC fellowship, it says out of 100 fellows, there can be a maximum of 20 fellows who has their PhD from outside India or China. As a result, you lose out all those excelling students who took the step, who got those good fellowships and moved out of India after their bachelor's, after their first degree. And you are getting all those students who stayed back in India and went through this cycle, and now they are applying for this fellowship and they are coming to. So if you're really interested in those excelling students, who already have the stamps of US, Europe, and other places, then you should consider opening up the PVC fellowship, making it open for Indians and Chinese, and not keeping this 20% bar, which you have right now. This is my just 2 cents. You might have, and another thing I would like to say is, maybe you would argue and say to me that we kept this 20% bar because we are interested to develop relationship with Indian research bodies. So maybe you are thinking that if you are recruiting only PhDs who have graduated from India, then with this you can develop research collaborations better with Indian universities. But actually, if you see this trend, you see that even if you are recruiting foreign Indian PhDs, you are still able to develop very good relationship with the research organizations and universities in India, because they are ultimately going back to India and joining academy, or they are going back to India and starting their company. So still, in no way, if you remove this bar of 20%, it affects in any way the research collaborations that you can have with the Indian research institutions and universities. You can still have it very perfectly. So this 20% bar is just your mistake, I would say. It's a very big statement I'm saying maybe, but this is my recommendations. Another thing that I find in the PBC fellowship is that you offer 100,000 shekels for a year, but this is their salary, and you don't offer any extra conference travel grants. This depends only if you, like, let me talk about Ben Gurion University, where I know clearly. In Ben Gurion, any student, whether he is a PhD or a postdoc, can apply once a year for $1,000 for traveling abroad for any conference. And so if even a PBC fellow is working, let's say, in Ben Gurion, then from 100,000 shekels which he gets a year as fellowship, this is the fellowship that he gets as salary. Other than that, he has to depend on that only $1,000 that he gets for any conference travel. And any random conference you pick up from Europe or US, frankly speaking, the conference fee is $500, and you cannot manage your travel and stay in $500. So actually, even if you are very good in buying a flight ticket and everything, hardly you might get to travel and make one international conference a year if you are a PBC fellow. So my recommendation will be that other than the fellowship that you offer, you should offer a small conference travel grants to them. I'm talking in completely in compliance with all the other fellowships that is offered. If you look at the Harvard, sorry, forget about Harvard. If you look at the Humboldt fellowships, if you look at the Marie Curie fellowships, if you look at the Erasmus Mundus fellowships, if you look at any international fellowships, they always offer 2 components in the fellowship. One is the fellowship, which goes as a salary, another small component which goes as professional development. What is this professional development? You use that for traveling to conferences or anywhere, because this, if it is not given, then it is very important for a researcher to not stay in their lab for all the 365 years, but also get a small exposure. And this is where that develops them professionally. And this is what is lacking currently in the PVC fellowship. So that's very briefly what I have to talk about. Other than that, my Chinese friend has really explained very nicely about all the existing challenges, so I don't need to repeat them. So thank you. Thank you for your kind attention.